Hello everyone, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to today's webinar all about variance reporting in Sage 50 Payroll. My name's Duncan, I'm your host and presenter, and I am joined today by my colleague Alice, who is standing by in the background ready and waiting to answer any questions. Let's now take a look at what we'll cover in today's webinar. So we'll start with a brief introduction explaining what variance reporting is and how it works. And then we'll dive into some demos. So we'll start by looking at the variance settings, which allows you to define exactly which variances you want to detect. And then we'll move on to the payroll process and running the variance report, which will include the exceptions to the variances, as well as some gross and net pay exception reports that you can run whenever you need to. Once we've been through a few scenarios, we'll then wrap up with the further support available. So we'll take you through upcoming webinars, how to access our help center, and more. Now, before we get into the introduction, we are going to run a quick poll on screen for you. So if you would like to join in, the question is on screen now. And we're just interested to know, before attending this webinar, were you aware of variance reporting in Sage 50 Payroll? So 3 answers to choose from. Yes, and I've used it. Yes, but I've never used it. Or no, you were not aware of variance reporting before attending this webinar. And we will follow up with a similar question at the end of today's session. So we'll give you about a minute to respond to the poll. Simply select your answer and click on to submit. And we'll take a look at those overall results before we move on with the webinar. So I can see that most of the votes are now in. So we'll end that poll now and share the results with you. And it does look like the majority of our audience today have not heard of variance reporting before attending this webinar. We've got 32% have heard of it but never used it, and a few of you have used it before. So hopefully something new for a lot of you to learn today. And for those that have used it, we can get you some advice on how to make the most out of that feature. So thanks so much for joining in. And we will get straight on to our introduction to variance reporting. So first of all, what is variance reporting? Well, it is a report, as the name suggests, that allows you to compare current payment and deduction values with previous values. Now, this report will then display any differences that exceed either amounts or percentages that you've defined in your variance settings. So flexible feature allowing you to choose what to check for and what allowances or differences you would tolerate. The idea behind it is it helps you to identify changes to payroll values and potential payroll mistakes. So it will flag to you anything that looks unusual that you might want to look into a little further. Now, to give you a sneak peek of the report, and this report can be generated automatically when you come to run your pre-update reports, this is what it's going to look like on screen. So it'll give you a summary of the employees that have been detected to have variances, a description of where the variance is. It'll show you what it's comparing it with. So you can compare either with the last period's values or an average value over 3 periods, and then the differences in terms of amount and percentage. So that is your main exceptions to variance report, and this is what the whole feature is centered around. Now, before we show you how to run that report, we do need to set up your variance settings. So this is where you are going to define what variances you would like to check for and exactly what would trigger an employee to appear on that report. And the best way to show you this is to dive into our first demo. So we're going to do that now. I'll just bring these slides down. And you'll see I'm already logged in to my payroll. Now, I've set up a few different scenarios depending on whether you deal with mainly static pay values or whether you have payments that vary. And first of all, to show you where to locate your variance settings, if you were to navigate to the company tasks here in the bottom left corner, and then go to variance settings, which is shown here just on the left-hand side. You'll see the variance settings is then split into 3 main tabs. So we have the settings for the main values, which would be gross and net pay, pension values, and then the total of payments and deductions. You can also go into more granular detail on specific payments and deductions. So we're going to come back and revisit the payments and deductions a little bit later in today's demo. So on this settings tab, you would first choose what items you would like to check. So in this first demo, we want to check gross and net pay values. We'd also like to check the pension values for both employee and employer. So I've flagged those 4 items to be included in the check. And then you would set the variance type that you would like to check for. And that could either be a variance of a fixed amount or of a percentage. Now, in the first demo I'm going to show you, we're going to deal with employees that always get the same fixed salary. So we wouldn't expect to see any variances, certainly in their gross pay. So for this first demo, we're going to leave the gross pay variance at 0. So I want to know about any change to the gross pay compared to previous values. I am going to allow a variance of £1 for net pay to account for rounding for things like tax calculations. And for the employer and employee pension, again, for these employees, I wouldn't expect them to change from previous values. So I'm going to leave those variances also at 0. And we're going to experiment with different settings for different scenarios as we go through the webinar. Now, we then need to know what we want to compare this with. So you can check for variances based on the last updated values, so the last time you ran a payroll, or you can check for variances of average payments over the last 3 periods. And in this first example, we're just going to go with the last update values. Finally, on these settings tabs, I'm going to tick the box because I want to be automatically alerted when variances occur. And that alert will come up at the point you run your pre-update reports. So that would be after you've entered the payments, when you come to produce things like payment summaries and pay slips. So I'm just going to save these basic settings for now. And in the rest of the demos, we're going to run some payrolls. We're going to check for variances, and we'll have a look at exactly what information appears on the reports. But before we do that, let's just summarize those variance settings that we've just seen. So first of all, from company and variance settings, you would choose what items you want to include in the variance check. So you've got the main gross and net pay totals, pension values, total payments and deductions. You would then define what variances you would like to check for, so whether that's percentages or fixed amounts, and what values you would like to set. You choose whether it's based on average pay or last updated values, and then you've got that box if you want to automatically run this report when you go into your pre-update reports if variances are found. And as you'll see a little bit later on, you'll be able to enter the same settings, but for specific payments and deductions. So let's just go back to our demo now and have a look at how this works as part of the pay run. So I'm going to start by looking at some employees who get paid a fixed salary. They don't have any additional payments, hence why we chose the fixed amount variances in our variance settings. I've already set my process date to my next pay date for these monthly paid employees, and I've been through and entered their payments. So we've got their normal salary amounts entered. As you can see, they don't tend to have additional amounts entered, and we've been through and saved their payments for this period. So at this point, I would usually run the pre-update reports. So I'm going to go into that now. And because we selected that box in the variance settings, if variances are found, you'll see this prompt. asking you if you want to run the report now. And if I click yes to this prompt, you'll see it's taken me into the pre-update reports, and straight away it has run the exceptions to variance report on screen, where you can see, alarmingly, it's flagged up all 3 of my employees. So what it's showing me here for employee number 1 is that it's detected a change to the employer pension contribution. So it's comparing it with the last updated values. So last month, the employer pension contribution was £86.25. At this period, it's quite a lot more, £948. So a difference of £862 or 1,000%. So clearly something needs investigating there. For employee number 2, it's flagged all 4 of the items we asked it to check. So it's telling us that the gross pay is different to the last updated value. So it's actually lower by about £388 or 15%. Net pay is also down, and both of the pension contributions are as well. So we would need to investigate what might be causing that. And then the third employee, we've got an alert for their net pay changing. So it was just under £2,000 in the last update, but this period it's actually increased by £116 to £2,109.80. So they've got a 5% increase in their net pay, but no change detected in their gross pay. So because we've seen these on the report, we would need to do a bit of investigation. So let's have a look at those employees now. Starting with employee number 1, it was the employer pension contribution that was flagged, which I wouldn't necessarily specifically check in the enter payment screen. So if I go to the pensions tab in the employee record and click manage schemes, I can then edit the pension scheme to check the contributions. And it looks like there's been a mistake entering the employer contribution. So maybe someone's been reviewing these. They've tapped the button too many times. It's gone in as 33% instead of the 3% it should be. So I'm going to fix that mistake by setting it back to 3% and then saving the employee record. For the second employee, all of the values were lower than what they were last period. And if I actually go back into enter payments for this employee, and you might have spotted this the first time round, I can see that the hours on number value is reduced, thereby reducing the salary. And actually the reason for this is that last month they were off on statutory parental leave. So they had some statutory paternity pay where I made up to their usual basic. But this period, now they're back to work, I forgot to set their salary back to the full amount. So that was a mistake I made, and that should hopefully rectify the problem for that one. The third employee who had a change in the net pay, if you haven't worked this one out, the reason for this, if I check the history, is that previously, where they were getting their usual net pay, 1993, 44 pence, they've been on NI category A. But this employee has recently reached state pension age, and they've now had a change to their NI category to C. So that means that the employee now is not paying national insurance, and that is why their net pay is higher. So when I go into the enter payment screen, I can see the salary value is exactly what I expect. The net pay is higher than it has been, and the reason for that is the national insurance. So now that I've done those investigations, if I go back into pre-update reports, still tells me that variances have been found. I'm going to click yes to run that report now, but we should see there's a lot less information on it now. Employee 1 has been removed. We fixed the problem with their pension. For employee 2, it's just alerting me that their salary amount has changed this period, and that's because last period we made up to basic. So that's why that is different. They're not getting SPP this month. The net pay is higher, and we know there's a genuine reason for that. So that is how you could use the variance reporting for employees who are on fairly static pay values. But now let's take a look at some employees who have additional payments, where naturally some of these payments we would expect to vary, and how we can still use variance reporting by slightly adjusting the variance settings. Now, just to show you the payments for these employees, again, they're paid monthly. They have fixed salary amounts, but some of them work overtime, which by its nature would change depending on how many hours overtime they've done. Some of them receive commission payments. And then we've got others that also have expenses being reimbursed. So a few more payment items going on here, which means I might want to use different variance settings for this type of payroll. So going back into the variance settings option, first thing I'm going to change for these employees is I want to check for variances based on their average pay, and that would be their pay over the last 3 updated periods. Now on the settings tab, I'm going to check the same items, but I'm going to change the variances I want to check for. So total gross pay, I want to know if anything changes by more than 15% compared to the average. And we'll set the same setting for the net pay. We'll actually do this across the pensions as well. But as well as these main items, I'm also going to check specifically on some of the payments. So I want to know about changes to overtime commission and expenses. So we're going to add these into the variance reporting check. So first of all, with overtime. So for this one, I'm going to set a percentage variance because I do know that the overtime naturally kind of fluctuates. But I want to be alerted if there's a change of more than 50% compared to the average overtime that they do. For commission, I know that in this payroll, commission values tend to be around about the £600 mark. So I want to know if there's a change compared to the average of more than £250. And then for the expenses, I know that expenses for these employees is about £50 a month, give or take. So let's check for any variances compared to the average of more than £50. So these specific payments will be checked as well as these overall values. So going back to my payroll tasks, I've already entered the payments for this period. I'm going to go into pre-update reports. It's flagging that variances have been found. So I'm going to click yes to run that report now. And we can see that we have 3 of those 4 employees included on the report. So if I just zoom in slightly, I'll show you what it's highlighting and then what the next steps might be. So for employee 4, it is telling me that the gross and net pay compared to average is higher than it usually is. So this is how much more the payment is this period, and this is the percentage values. So because that's more than the 15% that we put in our variance settings, that is why it has appeared on this report. And specifically, it has called out the overtime, saying that on average, they get £317 overtime. This period, it's over £1,000. So I would want to check that I've entered the correct number of hours of overtime, maybe check the timesheet for that employee, see if that's a mistake or whether they've just had a busy month. So obviously that is over 50% different to what it was on average. Employee 5 has also had increases in the pay, and that has been more than the 15% we asked about. And this seems to be driven by commission. So we can see on average, their commission is about £600. This period, it's £1,200. So because that was more than £250 different to what they usually get, that's why it's appeared on the report. And this last employee has expenses this period of £250. That's more than £50 than what they usually get paid on average. So again, that is the reason they are on the report. And you would do your investigation by checking the payments that are entered, confirming that yes, 50 hours was the correct number of hours overtime this month. We've double checked the commission. We're happy that's correct. Employee 6 wasn't included in the report. They have fairly normal values. And employee 7 here, you can see, has got more expenses than usual. So again, it's something that we would maybe look into. And if we discover we have made a mistake, we haven't updated the records yet, we can just go in and enter the corrected values. So that's just a couple of examples of how you might set up your variance settings. While we're here, at the moment, we've got it set to run the report automatically if variances are found. But I do want to show you that you can run it kind of manually. So if I just go back to all of my monthly paid employees and go into the pre-update reports, within the analysis folder, you've got the 3 exceptions reports. So exceptions to variances is the one that runs automatically if you've ticked the box to alert you if variances are found, or you can run it at any time from the analysis folder. So that's the one we've already seen. But these other 2 reports are useful if there's a specific pay amount that you want to check if an employee has exceeded. So gross pay exceptions allows you to enter an amount of gross pay to detect any employees who are being paid more than that, and similarly for net pay. So if I did a gross pay exceptions report, the way this works is you enter a criteria value. So if I say I want to find anyone with gross pay of more than £3,000, I put that in the criteria, and I can see there are 2 employees in that list currently earning more than £3,000 gross. So really simple reports. You could do the same for net pay if you have a net pay amount in mind as well. So just to let you know, in your variance settings, if you didn't have this box ticked to advise when variances occur, maybe you don't want to check for all of your employees, you can still run it from pre-update reports, and it says exceptions to variance report. It's found in the analysis folder. So that is about it for the short demo. But I do want to give you a summary of those reports that we've just seen and also run through a few common questions and answers. So all variance reports are found in the pre-update reports area. It's the exceptions to variances report that uses the variance settings, whereas the other 2, gross pay and net pay exceptions, is where you type an amount in the criteria values. And just to remind you what was on this report, so it shows you the item where a variance was found from your variance settings. It shows you what the either average or last updated value was, depending on whether you're checking against last update or average pay. What the value is this period, and then what the variance is in both pounds and pence, and expressed as a percentage. So just to finish up, 3 common questions and answers for you there. The first one, how is the average pay calculated? And I think we mentioned this in the demo. So if you choose average pay, it will be the average of the last 3 updated periods for that employee. So simply an average of the last 3 periods. Next one, can I have different variance settings for different employees? No, the same settings will apply to all employees. So if you did want to use different settings like I showed you in the demo, you would have to change the variance settings for each group of employees. So it is only one set of variance settings that can apply at any one time. And if you're looking for advice on how to work out what variance settings you should be using, it depends the nature of your payroll. If it's more of a static payroll, you tend to go to fixed amounts with very small variances. But one way you could get a feeling for what variances currently exist is to include the items in your variance settings, but set all of the variances to 0, fixed amount of 0. That will then show you all variance that currently exist. And then you could maybe look at those values, see what percentages to expect in normal times, and then bit of trial and error will get you the settings that work for you. Another way you could do it, a more scientific method maybe, is to run historical reports, analyze those in Excel just to see what historical variants have typically looked like. So hopefully some useful questions and answers for you there. Now that has nearly brought us to the end of the webinar. So I do have that follow-up polling question, which I'm going to launch on screen now. So after attending this webinar, how likely are you to use variance reporting in your payroll? So if you have an opinion on this and you'd like to join in, you can select one of the 4 answers in there. So are you very likely to use it? Are you somewhat likely to use the variance reporting? Are you somewhat unlikely, or perhaps very unlikely? And maybe it won't be for everyone, but it can be a useful tool just to help you stay on top of values and check for anything that might need that little bit more investigation. So we'll keep that open a few more seconds just before we wrap up. And I can see we've had a good percentage of the vote in now. So let's just take a look at those results. So it looks like we've got 36% of you very likely to use it, which is great to hear. 54% somewhat likely, so you're going to have a go. 11% somewhat unlikely. Like I say, it's not going to work for everyone. No one very unlikely to use it. So that's great to hear that you've found out something new about the software for some of you, and that you'll be giving this a try in the future. So just as we prepare to wrap up, I will run through some of the further support that's available to you guys. So we've got plenty of upcoming webinars. The next ones are now in August. So as you can see on the list, we've got attachments of earnings, online payslips and P60s, starters and leavers, HMRC submissions, report favorites, and payroll assistant. So all of these are free to attend. You can sign up on our website. You can also find further help and support on our help centre. So click any of the help icons in Payroll or visit sage.co.uk/help. And also to let you know about our brand new Sage AI Academy. So this is an e-learning course where you can do bite-sized learning to learn more about getting the most out of AI. So it's not specific to our Sage products. This is AI in general. So completely free to do, open to everyone. You can do 10 minutes a day, 1 lesson a day, and in 30 days, you will get that knowledge on using AI effectively. So find out more by clicking the link in your handout. Okay, so we're at the end of the allotted time, but we will keep the webinar open a few more minutes in case you have questions that you want to ask that we will answer in the Q&A. It is also your last chance to download the handout if you'd like to take that away with you. So don't forget to grab that before you leave. And when you do leave us today, we'll invite you to take a survey. So it'd be great to know what you thought of today's session. It's one of our shorter webinars. Let us know what you thought of it and any other webinars that you would like to see in the future. We'll also send you a follow-up email, which will contain a recording of today's session and also a link to complete the survey if you didn't get the chance when you leave. So I'm going to go onto mute briefly just to check on the questions if we've had any, and I will come back to you shortly to wrap things up. So I'll speak to you soon. Hi again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the webinar today. We don't appear to have any outstanding questions, so we're going to wrap up there. So if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to complete the survey when you leave us, very much appreciate reading your feedback, and look out for the follow-up email arriving later today. It'd be great to see you on some of our other webinars in the future, but for myself and Alice, it is goodbye for now.